Intel shares sliding after the company's first quarter guidance missed the street's expectations. Just to put a fine point on it again here, the company's revenue forecast at most $13.2 billion. Analysts on average had been looking for $14.3 billion. We're joined now by Matt Bryson, Wedbush Securities Senior Vice President, to talk more about this. Matt, are you surprised by what looks like a pretty big miss here on that first quarter forecast, and what's going on at Intel?
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised numbers are coming down as much as they are. You always end up with some seasonality in Q1. This was certainly a bit more than I'd expected. Having said that, if I'd have to guess, what we're going to hear from Intel on the call, if you look at what was coming out of Taiwan in terms of numbers, their ODMs showed a slowdown in Q4. So PC builds slowed down. Obviously, Intel's CCG revenues, so their compute going into PCs, lifted a fair amount in Q4. I would bet that they just overshipped demand a bit in Q4, and what we're seeing in Q1 is those inventories getting worked down again. And if I had to guess, that's the reason for the lower guide.
And so, Matt, I'm interested in how you see sort of the PC business over 2024. There's kind of some debate between analysts as to what the PC market overall looks like. What's your take?
So I actually think the PC market's going to end up looking pretty good. So in part, the reason that you saw those builds in Taiwan get reduced is it was OEMs looking to cut back on inventory because I think everyone was a bit worried about macro. So I don't think there's a lot of finished goods inventory out there. Because builds were slower in Q4, you get an easier comp into Q1. And then when you're thinking about the back half of the year, remember it was 3-4 years ago when we saw all those purchases tied to COVID. On the corporate side of things, there's typically a 3-year refresh cycle. So I think you get to the end this year between corporations refreshing their PCs because service contracts are up, between there being a new Windows OS, between us not being that far away from Microsoft stopping support on Windows 10, I think you get a pretty nice refresh starting towards the end of 2024 into 2025.
Is that going to be enough to help Intel, though? I know you're neutral on the shares, Matt. I mean, what do you need to see from Intel here to get you back involved with a higher rating?
Yeah, so I think when I look at Intel into 2024 and you look at their end markets, I mean, what really matters is PCs and servers. What we saw in 2023, it wasn't a great year for PCs. Again, I think things get better in 2024. On the server side, because corporations were worried about the macro, they weren't really spending. You had the large cloud providers shift spending towards AI, so away from those standard servers that use a lot of Intel compute. I think all of that has to reverse a little bit. And so that's all a good backdrop for Intel. But I think at the same time, if you're investing in Intel right now, you are making a bet on their manufacturing roadmap, that they can get their new products out, that they'll reestablish their dominance in terms of process. And I'm just not there yet. They just are starting to ship or started to ship in December their first 7-nanometer part. So I think moving to 4, moving to 3, moving to 18A, I want to get a little bit more confident that they're going to restore their manufacturing leadership. And I think that's why you're investing in Intel, because you're making a bet on them being the leader in manufacturing again.
And Matt, do you also see Intel as a smart way for investors to play that broader secular AI theme? Obviously Pat Gelsinger will talk a lot about the time, the effort they're putting into that tech. How do you think about it?
Yeah, so I think in the data center, on the silicon side, we have NVIDIA as the clear leader. It looks like AMD is establishing itself as the closest competitor to NVIDIA at this point. I think Intel is behind those two, potentially behind some of the cloud providers' attempts to build their own silicon. So I'm a little bit less bullish around their ability to compete in AI in the data center right now. Where they may get a bump or a boost is certainly we're going to see AI in edge devices at some point. I just don't think it's a 2024 story. I think it's a 2025, 2026 story. When that happens, you'll see more content in devices. There'll be more potential revenue for Intel. Again, it plays in that theme of a refresh cycle, but I don't think it's this year.
All right, Matt, Bryson, thanks a lot. Really appreciate your perspective on Intel as we go through these numbers. Thanks.